Hello and welcome to 4am Art. In this video, I'm going to go over 10 simple drawing exercises that if you practice enough will really help you become a better artist. Any drawing starts with the basic foundation of a simple line, whether they're straight, curved, scribbled, etc., all of which when combined end up becoming a finished drawing. So let's go ahead and start with the most basic of these lines, which are straight lines. And I'm just using a mechanical pencil here, but you can use any writing instrument, pencils, pens, or whatever. But we'll start with drawing evenly spaced lines that are of the same height or length. And now we can start drawing them in a different direction, diagonal this time. And notice so far I've been going from top to bottom, but what you want to practice too is going from bottom to top. And we're going to vary the techniques we use here just to keep improving our ability to draw these lines, and using muscles that we're not comfortable with, directions we're not comfortable with, and your muscle memory will improve. We can also draw these lines closer together. We can start separating them with widening spaces in between. We can vary the pressure that we put on the line to get lighter and lighter tones. We can adjust the length. So let's start with some short lines, getting progressively longer. And I'm reverting to my tendency to go from top to bottom here. So getting longer and longer, and then shorter. And I'm going to change the direction, bottom to top. We can also draw them so that they start to separate, start to radiate from basically the same starting point, like so. Again, I'm varying the lengths of the lines. We can start from the top and draw all the lines coming from the same starting point as well. And now I'm going to start shortening the lines. Again, I'm going from top to bottom. We can also start from bottom to top, draw the same pattern, except I'm going to the same ending point. To me, it's easier to go from top to bottom, as I mentioned, but it's good to practice the other direction as well. We can also draw different heights, but all coming to the same level, such as these sets of straight lines. And to make it easier, what you could do is draw a starting line like this, and then draw from that line as your reference. So this time I'm going from the top to the bottom, always starting from the same horizontal line. We can also do this same exercise with a vertical starting line. Here I'm going to go left to right, always ending on that same line. And I can go from right to left. So try to make up your own variation of drawing straight lines. And do this whenever you have a writing instrument and some paper. So let's move on to our second exercise. And in this exercise, we are going to draw parallel straight lines. But we're going to combine this with horizontal lines, more or less evenly spaced. Again, go from right to left, left to right. just to vary. And let's do another one here. These types of parallel lines are typically used for shading. When you just have one set of parallel lines, it's called hatching. And when you add a second layer going in a different direction, that would be called cross-hatching. And as you can tell, the tonal value of the upper section is lighter than the bottom. You could add a third layer, say the bottom half of the lower section, with diagonal lines, and you'll get yet a darker tone. Vary this as well. Here we're going to start with diagonal lines. Again, more or less evenly spaced. And vary the direction as well. And then add another set of diagonal lines. I'm going from left to right, or upper left to bottom right, but we can also start from the bottom right and go to the upper left. Just make it as varied as possible, and that'll just help with your muscle memory and your coordination. Next, let's draw these radiating lines. And add another set of lines. This time, the starting point or meeting point of these next set of lines is down here at the bottom right. This is just a variation of cross-hatching. We can also vary the width or the distance between the lines, making them progressively further apart, but say keeping the horizontal lines more or less evenly spaced. Again, I'm going left to right here, but then I'll try going from right to left. It's usually easier to draw longer lines using your whole wrist or arm coming from the elbow or the shoulder, whereas shorter lines, let's do these short lines. I find it easier just to use my fingers, like so, top to bottom, bottom to top. Horizontal lines, short lines, just using my fingers or wrist. And if I draw longer lines, I'll move from my elbow or my shoulder using my entire arm. The range of your fingers, of course, is much more limited. Therefore, they're much better suited for shorter lines. Again, we'll go ahead and draw some vertical lines. Vary the distance between. And finally, let's just draw progressively shorter straight lines going to the right and progressively longer lines as we go to the right. So for our next exercise, we're going to draw the next most common type of line, which are curved lines. We're going to keep these roughly about the same height. I'm going in the top to bottom direction, but here I'm going from bottom to top just to use different muscles. And we can change the direction of the curve, this time bulging to the right. Vary the direction again of the line from top to bottom, and now bottom to top. Let's make these progressively shorter as we go to the right. Notice that the curve itself is roughly about the same. And then we can do the same thing going to the other direction. progressively getting longer, the lines. And of course, what we also want to do is draw different radius of curved lines. So these are a little bit tighter, a component of a smaller circle, and we'll go the other direction. Next, let's start with a straight line and very slowly, progressively make the curved line tighter and tighter until it essentially becomes half a circle. So if you continue this line out, you would get a circle. And let's do it from the other direction. So we have a very curved line, part of a circle, a semicircle, and then start making this curved line a little flatter as we go to the right, until eventually we come to our straight line. All right, so let's go ahead and continue this one. And this time we're going to continue this, but we're gonna start changing the direction that our pattern's going. So as we draw more lines here, this section becomes farther apart while the ending part of the line become closer together. So notice how we're changing direction, going this way and then curving downward. And finally, we are going back in a horizontal direction. We can also do a variation of that. Let's start with this part here, where we go, not only do we change directions, we're also going to change the size. So from here, we're going to draw a curved line. We're going to start changing the direction upward first. But notice that I'm starting to shorten my curved line. And here, I'm starting to change the direction as I am actually making these lines a little bit bigger. I'm keeping the radius more or less the same. Here I'm more or less straight, but I'm going to start curving it again to the left. And now I'm going horizontal again. So just a couple more variations. We're going to draw this pattern, except we're going up and down. And then the other direction. Both shallow curves as well as tight curves. And we can make these curved lines narrower and narrower as we go to the bottom. And just to fill this space, we'll go the other direction with shorter and shorter curved lines. So for our fourth exercise, we're going to combine these curved lines into different patterns. Here, I'm always ending at the same point, but the curved lines are all curving in the same direction. You could stop right here, or I'm just going to continue this all the way to where we started. And we can also go the other direction. So let's go this way, curving to the right. And again, I'll just go all the way around. We could also draw these curved lines coming from the same point, but we're going to start changing the direction of the curve until we get to a straight line, and then start changing the curve in the other direction. We could also do this starting from the top, curve it to the left first, slowly getting flatter until you get to a straight line, and then curve it the other direction. We can also start from one point and practice this flicking motion coming from that point. And what happens typically with this technique, especially with a regular pencil, is that the starting point marks will be darker, and as you go out to the ends, the pencil, the lead comes off the paper and it becomes a little bit lighter. We could do it the other direction using a flicking motion, and we can even change the direction. We can, of course, also draw parallel curved lines and do what we did with the straight lines, which is to do some hatch lines, which are these parallel lines, and then add a second set of curved lines, and we get cross-hatched lines, except instead of using straight lines, we're using curved lines. Add a third layer, and we get a darker tone. And as I mentioned previously, these hatched lines, and cross-hatched lines are typically used for shading and get darker tones with more layers of parallel lines. So here, I'm just drawing some more lines, and I'm varying the direction, varying the length. And then what I'm going to do is I'll just go ahead and add a second layer, but still going the same direction as the previous. But simply adding more lines here will get us a darker shade, a darker tone, darker value. And let's draw a third layer. Again, still same direction. And notice that we're getting a nice gradient now from the top, which is lighter, to the bottom, which is darker. So for our fifth exercise, let's draw some circles and use a loose motion using your whole arm or even moving from the elbow. Draw these in different sizes, and also practice drawing these from the other direction. My default is to go counterclockwise like that, but you can also try doing it clockwise. Again, we're going with different sizes. Find what works best for you, but it's always good to practice the other direction. And I think you could probably tell that my default, my comfort direction would be counterclockwise, where I can typically draw a better circle, although maybe not. Well, I think I'm the same level in either direction, but you want to practice that. Practice keeping them evenly spaced or touching like so, or evenly spaced like this with a little bit of a space in between and then a little bit wider space, but also overlapping. So let's just draw them all roughly the same size, but overlapping roughly the same amount. This will improve your spatial awareness. So where you draw, is exactly more or less where you want to draw it. Draw your line without measuring. For our next exercise, let's draw some ovals. First, let's draw some vertical ovals. You can use your whole arm, as I'm doing here. I'm moving basically from the shoulder. And again, we're going to go both clockwise and counterclockwise. And you can try drawing it using your fingers. See how you can improve your finger dexterity, your finger control. Both again clockwise and counterclockwise. Notice I'm just using my fingers here. And let's draw some horizontal ovals as well. Clockwise and counterclockwise. So I'm gonna use my fingers, purely my fingers, and then I'm gonna use my wrist. I'm moving purely from the wrist here, and I can also try moving from the shoulder. The bigger the muscles you use, say the shoulder, the arm, the less control you will have, typically. Next, let's draw some diagonal ovals. Again, clockwise, and counterclockwise, and then clockwise. Go the other direction, the other slant, counterclockwise. Here I'm using mostly my fingers, and then clockwise. And we can also vary the size. So let's start with smaller ovals and getting bigger. And then practice making them smaller. And we can also vary the shallowness of the oval. So let's start with a straight line. When we draw a straight line, it's basically a side view of a two-dimensional circle. So as we change the angle of the circle to a full face front, you go from a straight line to a very shallow oval, and this oval becomes progressively wider as you change the angle. It becomes fatter until eventually you get a circle. So that's good practice as well. And what you also want to do, of course, is vary the direction that you're drawing it, clockwise, counterclockwise, as well as the sizes, just like we vary the size here. We can do that right here, making it progressively bigger. For exercise number 7, we're going to draw some basic shapes. Let's say a circle, which we already practiced, but we're going to draw concentric shapes. So with a circle, we'll draw progressively bigger circles around the same previous circle. And we can go clockwise and counterclockwise. And we can try different shapes. This is just good practice to draw different shapes. Again, we're trying to improve our muscle memory, our dexterity with our fingers. So for this triangle, for instance, the easiest line for me is drawing this first section, and then this is the next easiest. Going upward here is the most difficult for me. So let's practice going the other direction, clockwise, and you want to draw this continuously, one continuous line. And I'm finding right here that it's easier if I use my whole arm. So practice that. And let's try a different shape here. Let's draw a diamond. Again, continuous line. Clockwise or counterclockwise. And then clockwise. You can vary the distance between the lines, or you can vary it as well. There will be natural variation, of course, because it's not that easy to draw these perfectly. And if you can draw a star, a good skill to have, we can do the same thing. Draw bigger and bigger stars, concentric, clockwise and counterclockwise. So with all of these, it's easier to draw the bigger sizes using your whole arm, whether you're moving from your elbow and or your shoulder. The range of motion using just your fingers will be limited, and it's best suited for the smaller shapes. Next, let's draw a heart. In both directions. Now this may or may not be easy for you because most people have drawn hearts in the past. Again, for the larger shaped heart, I'm using my whole arm, rotating from the elbow and or shoulder. But can you draw an upside down heart? So let's try drawing an upside down heart. This won't be as familiar, so you have to be a little bit more deliberate with your drawing. Here I'm changing the direction of my line to clockwise from that initial counterclockwise. Let's try drawing a rhomboid that varies with each succeeding one. So notice that I'm changing the shape of my four-cornered shape here and changing the angle slightly so that each one isn't exactly like the last one as far as the shape, the size, and the direction that it's taking. So for exercise number 8, let's draw some zigzag lines. At first, we'll keep it fairly even as far as the spacing and the height, but then we can start making them a little bit wider, as well as narrower. And we can also vary the speed at which we adjust the width, the spacing. So here I'm progressively getting wider as far as the sawtooth pattern, and then progressively narrowing it down again. So we can also practice this going in a vertical direction. So our zigzag is side to side. Again, I'm starting to widen the spacing and then narrowing it down. Just go back and forth. We can vary the height, making them shorter and shorter. and then slowly getting taller. We can also start changing the direction of our zigzag, and notice that as I start to curve it downward, the spacing on this side of the zigzag become progressively wider, whereas the spacing over on this side will become narrower. So just change the direction, and then we're going to just go up and down, and then start changing the direction again to go right. While we do this, we could also make our zigzag progressively narrower. And bigger, but closer up together. And you just want to practice changing different parameters of the zigzag line. And we can also start with a reference line and do our zigzag such that the base is always in the same level, whether they change in height or we've got our basic pattern as before, right here with the same height across. We can also draw a reference line again, except this time our zigzag is always meeting at the top. Again, you can vary how wide our zigzag is and the height. So experiment with this. This really helps with controlling your line, improving your dexterity and finger control. So for exercise number 9, we're going to do a variation of a zigzag pattern where we go from side to side, except instead of having sharp pointed ends, we're going to curve it. So we're going to go side up and down, but instead of our sharp ends with the zigzag, we're going to make them curved. And we can make them narrow or wide. We can keep the long lines in between, long straight lines, fairly even and straight, or we could start curving it a little bit like this. We can vary this again by varying the height of our line, varying the height of our pattern, progressively taller and then shorter. So now you have kind of like a sine wave pattern. And of course, we can start changing the direction of this as well. So let's start curving it downward. So now we're doing a vertical pattern. And again, you can vary the shape, and we'll start heading over to the left again. And once again, go to our straighter pattern. And just like right here, make sure you practice different directions. So here we're going to go up and down, and again vary the width of our pattern and practice going at a diagonal direction. Again, varying the width of our pattern. Let's go this diagonal. And here I'm going to vary the height, but still going in this diagonal direction. So practice this pattern, this undulating pattern all over the place here. And we'll just go ahead and fill up the blank spaces. And notice this pattern. I'm just going in different directions, slowly filling in the space. And right here. And let's do one more right here. Okay, let's go on to our final exercise where we're going to draw scallops. Combination of straight lines and a curved end. Just go back and forth, and we can vary the height, keeping the roughly about the same level base. And you can make things easier for you by lightly drawing a baseline that you come to with the end of your straight section, and that just makes it easier. And let's draw another reference line. We'll go the opposite direction, and here I'll try to make kind of a mirror image of our top pattern here. And just like our previous exercise, we want to go, of course, in different directions. So here, we're going to turn it upside down. Now we've got a bunch of U shapes, and this basically becomes kind of a mirror image of this pattern. Next, we'll go ahead and start changing the direction of our scallop to where we're now practicing a vertical orientation, and we want to go the other direction as well. And we can make this progressively wider and narrower. Finally, let's draw a flower. Start with a small circle, and we're going to do our scallop all the way around. And what we have here is a daisy. And we'll just draw different sizes of this. Now notice that with this pattern, these petals are progressively getting narrower as we get to the center. We could also do this such that the width of our scallop stays roughly the same. Of course, they will have to be narrow in order to meet at the center evenly. We can also make our petals wider, like so. So practice these drawing exercises. The more you do these, the better you will be, the better you'll improve your muscle memory, your finger dexterity, and make it easier for you to draw more complex shapes, lines, and of course, complex drawings. So I hope you found some value in this video. If so, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next video. Take care. Bye.